Listeners, today I'm inviting you into my living room. That's right, I'm doing a living room chat with my client and now good friend, Kelly Kearsley. Kelly's here to share all the goodness behind starting as a nonfiction writer, learning how to write a novel, landing her dream agent, and scoring a traditional book deal with a Big Five publisher. Before we get into our conversation, let me share her bio. Kelly Kearsley writes humorous contemporary fiction, and her debut novel, called Talented and Gifted, will be published by Grand Central Publishing in 2027. She began her career as a news and publicist journalist, winning investigative awards for her reporting. Her work has been published in the Wall Street Journal, Money Magazine, Forbes, CNN Money, Runner's World, and more. She's also been an organizer, blogger, and investor in Oregon's startup community. Kelly lives here in Bend, Oregon, and I can't wait for you to get to know her, so let's jump right into it. Welcome to The Whole Writer, a place where we talk about what it means to show up as a writer. Not just a better writer or a more productive writer or a published writer, but a whole one. Someone who's grounded in their voice, in their community, in their creative path, even when the world tells them to hustle, compare, or conform. I'm Nicole Meyer, a multi-published author and book coach who believes that nurturing the person behind the page is just as important as refining the words on it. Each week, we'll explore the terrain of writing life with honesty, warmth, and practical wisdom, creating space for you to write from a place of wholeness rather than depletion. Whether you're drafting your first manuscript or publishing your fifth book, you'll find conversation and companionship for the journey here. So, settle in, bring your questions and your curiosity, and let's discover what it means to write and live with authenticity and purpose. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Whole Writer. I am so thrilled to have my guest here today because not only is she an incredible writer, but she's also a friend. Welcome, Kelly Kearsley.
Hello.
We are having Kelly on at the perfect time because so many listeners are right in the midst of either writing their novel, polishing, querying, or even thinking about the next steps for self-publishing. And Kelly has just announced her deal with a traditional Big Five publisher. So I thought I'd have her on and we can talk about everything soup to nuts, how she went from learning how to write a book all the way to getting a fabulous book deal. So hi, yay, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, so let's kind of go back in time to something that totally stands out in my mind because we were together. Kelly and I were together in the spring and she came over with her husband for a drink to our house. And I specifically remember you being in the middle of the query process and you secretly saying to me in almost a whisper, I think I'm going to stop because this is kind of a lot. And what happened the very next morning, Kelly?
The next day, I got an email from the person who's now my agent asking for a call. So yeah, I was in quite a low spot. Well, I don't know if it's quite a low spot. I was on the query roller coaster at that point and had been querying kind of on and off for maybe the better part of the fall and into the winter. And it had some momentum and then a lot of quiet and then some momentum, a lot of quiet. And just was having a hard time understanding if I had written a book that was how I learned to write a book or if this book had kind of any legs in the market. So yeah, Nicole, you caught me at a low spot.
Which was bananas because I remember before I'd even had my coffee the next morning, you texted me and said, I got the call from the agent.
Right.
So it was literally less than 24 hours. And you broke my rules of saying, don't be an Eeyore, like don't self-sabotage yourself. Don't say to yourself, oh, I'll never make it because that energy seeps in. You completely broke that. So I can't really say that to people anymore.
Well, and I think too, it's actually, well, you know me, Nicole, I'm not like naturally a negative person, but I do think the query process is, I'll just say it for all the writers out there. It is hard. It's demoralizing. It's a little hard on your mental health. And I think the part that's really hard is just the not knowing. I liked getting responses. Like if I got rejection or of course you want to get a full request, that says something. It's the kind of sending things off into a void that gets really hard and starts to make you question like, is this process worth it? Do I have the right thing? Have I done anything that anyone is interested in? And you're trying to do something that is hard and against the odds.
Right.
But you also want to have a big goal. So balancing those two things mentally, I don't think I learned how to do it very well.
Well, you're human and you go through the process like so many of us where you're excited about the project, but then the reality of not getting feedback is very difficult.
Yeah. Another funny dynamic that I think a lot of writers will understand is the whole time while the industry is being a little quiet or while you're waiting to hear back from agents, your friends, your family, the people who aren't participating in the process as much are just wanting to know when they can read your book.
Yes. And they don't understand the process.
Oh, and your answer is like somewhere between never and 5 years from now. Yeah.
Okay, so that actually reminds me of when you first started querying, you actually did get feedback from one particular agent and you said it was really helpful, right?
Yes. So again, and maybe breaking the rules, we're all told not to expect personal feedback from agents. I was wanting to send out like a test query. The first query I sent out, I remember I was sitting on my deck and I gathered up all my courage and just pushed send and then sat there and was like, I'm in the world now. And I woke up, that was an afternoon, I actually woke up to an answer from that agent. So it was so fast. It was a personalized answer, which again, we're not supposed to anticipate, but it was one I really appreciated. She was not requesting the manuscript. She was passing on it, but she gave me some really good advice about the first chapters. And she told me I needed to increase the momentum and cut the length. And I did that immediately. So I loved that kind of as a test and I incorporated the feedback right away. And I think ultimately it made everything stronger for the next batch.
Wow, that is incredible. And really what a gift. I had the same thing when I was first querying my awful manuscript that still lives in a drawer is I had an agent, I think it was after 8 or 9 months, send me an email almost chapter by chapter of why the book wasn't working.
Right.
And I mean, it was the biggest gift.
Yeah.
It was permission for me to really look at it objectively. And it sounds like you got the same sort of feedback.
Yeah. In this process, I think as writers, maybe sometimes our first instinct is to be nervous about negative feedback. I think all feedback is kind of a gift and you can decide to do with it what you want. Like I said before, it's the silence that's a little more unsettling. It's the no response that makes you question. But you can decide what to do with feedback, whether you want to take it or not.
Okay, so we're going to stay on the query train just a little bit longer before we dive into all the fun stuff about finding your editor at a publishing house and about your actual writing process. But since we're talking about queries, I did want to ask you what your thoughts are on the process. So pretend there's a listener out there, which there is, who has polished their book to their best of their ability. And now they think, you know what, I'd like to be traditionally published. I'd like to think about querying. What are your thoughts on it compared to all the things you were told, we talked about the lore or the myths or the fear that's on social media or Substack. What are your thoughts on the whole process?
I have lots of thoughts. I won't convey them all. I think if you're a writer on the query journey, you can consume a lot of information online via Threads or Substack that can start to feel like it's contradicting itself. And so maybe the first advice is to pause at some point and just know that you've made something that's quality enough. And like I did, send out a test, send out 2, see what happens. To not treat your query letter as a one and done thing that you're trying to perfect and then you're blasting out to, 50 agents and seeing what happens. I treated it more like an evolution. I tweaked it as I went along. And I think it got stronger. And I also think it made me feel better knowing that I could change it as we went along, that I didn't have to be married to the first version, that I could incorporate feedback like I got from that agent. I ended up going to the Kauai Writers Conference. I queried a batch of agents, then I went to Kauai. And during Kauai, I did kind of tweak some aspects of the query letter to highlight the things that were catching agents' attention at that point. So I think all of it becomes just information gathering, and you're incorporating that into your query letter as you go along to make it stronger and stronger.
Yeah. Would you say that when you pitched agents in person at a conference, was it even helpful just to see their facial expressions when you pitched them what the book was about?
Yeah, you wanted to see if they were interested or glancing down at their phone. I think that what surprised me is, as writers, we love our stories and there's things that we think are the best part of our stories. And I was surprised that sometimes the things that were resonating were things that weren't even on my radar. So what was helpful to hear from agents was just that, like, they were calling out details that I hadn't called out, and they're more familiar with markets. They're keeping up on trends. And so I truly believe that you can't write to trends. And I also believe that there's probably something in every novel that can kind of dovetail to a trend if you understand what they are. So kind of marrying that like business aspect to the creative piece and getting that information from agents was so important. But it was also nerve-wracking to meet them in person. You feel like, I don't know, like you're meeting a celebrity.
Yeah. And that's how they get treated from writers.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And I am pleased to say all the ones I met in person in Kauai were delightful and kind and normal human people who love books. So
good.
Once you kind of realize that, the pressure gets off a little bit.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up because I am a firm believer. I've been to so many conferences in my day and I've pitched in person. And I'm a firm believer at this point in the market and the climate we're in and the landscape of publishing that usually what happens when people pitch at conferences is not a signed contract, but it is a firm way to find out reaction and feedback to your book.
Yeah.
So you're not really going to get, oh, I scored an agent, I'm going to get a deal. You're going to find out, does this book have legs and what's the reaction?
And you're getting that reaction in real time instead of in query timeline, which might be like weeks or months until you hear back. So I would encourage, like, if you have a chance to pitch agents in person, by all means, go and take it. And you might be nervous, but try not to be.
Yeah.
And just have that conversation. That was the other thing that I think was beneficial that I took away from in-person pitching was making it a conversation. Like, it doesn't have to be a total sale.
Absolutely.
You know, even the agents, I pitched an agent that right up front, she was not interested. And so I just used the time to like ask her, how can I strengthen this letter? What did she think other people would be interested in? And she ended up being super helpful.
That's amazing. And I would really encourage people listening to think about going to an in-person conference. There are so many things that can happen locally in your region. Sometimes even libraries put things on. You can go big like Kelly did and go to Kauai, but you can also find things that are just a quick drive away and go for the afternoon instead of 3 days in a row. There are so many options out there, but there is so much experience to be had by going to an in-person event and telling people what your book is about.
You also have to remember that you know what you want from your book and you kind of know what you want out of your publishing experience. And for instance, I did have one agent that had liked my writing style, but kind of wanted me to change the premise of my book to turn it, say, like more into a rom-com. And that just wasn't something that I felt like I wanted to do, even though I read rom-coms and like them. And that was just my choice. And I think you can make choices like that and remember that you have agency in the process. At the end of the day, it still is your work.
You're the creator, for sure. This is why you're in it, to tell the story you came to tell, not what you think you have to do just to sell it. Yeah. Okay, so now that we talked about querying and pitching, I want to go backwards a little bit and talk about your actual creative process. I know from working with you and from being your friend is that you strengthen the book. I mean, you really spent a lot of thoughtful time and months strengthening what you had on the page. And I know a big part of that is your literary village. So I want you to maybe share a little bit, tell us about the importance you think a literary village has, maybe the types of people who were in your village that really helped you get through the process.
Yeah. I think having a literary community is probably the number one most important thing. And when I started making it known that I wanted to write a book, people would say, oh, well, you need to find a group or you need critique partners. And I'm like, but how? Where are these hidden people who are writing? And I'm going to meet, like, how will I find them? And I think just like with anything, it starts by just putting it out there. I have two funny anecdotes. One, I decided to like be brave and just started telling lots of people that I was going to write a book. And there was a guy standing in my driveway watching his son jump on our trampoline. He was my neighbor, but I hadn't met him. And he asked me what I did. And I said, oh, I'm a writer, but also I'm going to write my first fiction book. And he happened to be a writer working on his fiction book. And he was my neighbor. So I spent a summer meeting with him every Wednesday.
Awesome.
And he was probably like the first time I ever shared writing with someone. But it was so valuable. Another one of the first people I told was your partner in Bookworks, Gretchen.
Yeah.
And we were meeting about something completely unrelated, something related to my regular work. And I got up the courage to tell her I also wanted to write fiction. And she led me to Nicole. So I think putting out there the idea that you are a writer, that you want to write a book is intimidating to people. and you might have a little bit of imposter syndrome. Mostly people are so excited. And they immediately think of all the ways that they can help you. And you start to create a network really organically. So via Nicole, I took a class. The people in that class became my critique group. I also met a bunch of authors in Bend. From going to conferences, I met other writers who I'm now still in contact with. It starts like that. I think I've noticed other people kind of building community online. Substack's a great place to start meeting writers. I think people are hungry for connection. I might be one of the rare, extroverted writers. So I actually don't like being lonely in my office, writing by myself all the time.
Yeah.
So sharing the process, talking to people, commiserating, celebrating, it's all so important. And it actually kind of makes the whole adventure worth it.
Yeah, I love that you share all that. And it's like a snowball effect. I mean, you really told one person, and then it snowballed into a couple people, and then it snowballed into a group. And then traveling, you met more people. And it's just bringing people along. Yes, there's going to be some people who don't feel like, quote, your people.
Yeah.
But you really built that, Kelly, within 2 years.
Yeah.
It's a big community.
Yeah. And I think you get comfortable in your writer's skin. And that was something, I am a writer in my day job. I used to be a journalist and now I freelance ghostwrite. And I was nervous to tell people I was writing a fiction book. I was kind of embarrassed that they would think I couldn't do it.
Oh, wow.
Or that they would think I was bad. Who knows what I thought. It was silly, but also I think something that people really get is just what you're telling someone your big goals. What are they going to say? And I think just getting comfortable saying it over and over and, and I just telling everyone, hopefully not in an obnoxious way.
No,
but in a way that just lets people give you a resource if they have it. And I think writers are an exceptionally generous community.
Absolutely.
And I would be happy to talk or help writers who are looking how to start. And I ran into the same with others. So
yeah, I totally agree. My other writer girlfriend and I kind of giggle about something that happened so long ago, 15 years ago. We were in a local grocery store and a guy walked in, and for some reason we started talking about books and writing. And my girlfriend and I were writers. And he was like, I am a novelist. And he had nothing published, but he handed us a business card that said novelist. And that's
that guy.
Yeah, that's the kind of guy. It's like, well, I don't know if he's really growing his community. But if there's a difference between being that guy with I'm handing you my card and the person who comes in and says, I am trying to write a book. If you know anybody else, can you introduce me? I'd love to meet them. There's two ways to go about it. Right?
Yes. But also maybe just assume a teeny bit of the confidence of a guy who would hand you a business card that said novelist.
We just still get
you can
out
be
of
too.
it.
Yeah.
No shade on being a novelist, just on really going there with the printed cards before you were published.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's probably about visualization and
manifesting.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned something that I actually would love for you to share with the listeners is you started your writing career in the nonfiction space. Can you talk a little bit about your background in that? And then if it helped or hurt your writing process when it came to novels?
Yep. So I have been writing for my whole career. I went to journalism school and started off in journalism. My first jobs were in newspapers, which I really loved. I used to write for a business team in Tacoma, and I spent a teeny bit of time at the AP and Seattle Times, and then a longer amount of time at the News Tribune. And so I've been around writers, writing for work for a long time. Then when newspapers became a little bit less viable, I switched into freelance writing, which I've been doing for about 14 years. I think having a career as a writer was obviously very beneficial in that there's some stuff that I've just learned over 20 years of writing about the mechanics of sentences and how to structure stories. And also really important, building up that writing endurance and that writing muscle.
Yes, that's a really good point.
Yeah, I've spent many hours writing every day. So that component of writing a novel didn't freak me out. One thing that I wish I could impart on more people is I've worked with so many editors. I've had people rip apart my writing in really horrific ways.
Yeah, same.
And I kind of adopted a mentality a long time ago where I'm not that married to the word. And I think that was a little freeing in the novel writing process. I felt like I could get something down. If it was bad, I wasn't that worried about it. I knew I could come back and fix it. So I think that's helpful. There were also a couple habits that I actually had to, I don't know if unlearn is the right word, but I needed to change. Number one, because I come from a nonfiction background, specifically journalism, it's been hammered into me to not apply emotion to people.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Like in journalism, like you don't even want to use verbs other than said.
Yes.
Because you might be like inferring how someone said something.
Putting your own.
Yeah, I'm putting my own perspective on it.
Wow.
And Nicole knows this because she did a dev edit on my first draft. I had to do a lot of work to get emotions into my characters and lots of layering and adding and learning. And I bought the emotional thesaurus.
Yeah, good.
And I have a distinct memory of looking at my book and feeling like, well, I just can't assume that I know what these people are thinking and feeling. And it's like, no, I have to. Like, that's what I have to do.
I remember just being like, Kelly, more interiority. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? Well, how are they reacting?
We can't assume. We have to ask them. So what was a struggle for me, though, actually became fun. I started to it actually was really freeing. I was like, oh, I'm not boxed in by kind of the reporting component. I can have these people do whatever I want.
And go overboard.
Yeah. They can be crazy. The crazier, the better, right?
You can take it way beyond what you're used to taking it.
Yeah.
Nonfiction.
Yeah. Another lesson I learned that I do think falls into this is because I wrote for work, I knew like the only way that writing gets done is when you dedicate time to it. And I floundered around for a little bit getting my novel off the ground because I viewed it, I don't know, as a hobby or as something that was like extraneous to the other writing work I was doing. At some point, I had a bit of like a revelation where I realized this has to be a priority and I have to block time for it, just like I would block time for work. And so really like the bulk of my novel writing, I got done over like the summer and the fall. And I blocked out in my calendar 2 to 3 hours every single day and sat down and did it no matter what my workload was. And that's how it got done. And so I think just kind of understanding there's just a real labor component to the whole thing. You just have to be like a butt in a seat, cranking out those words, even when you don't want to. It's a joyful process, but there's times when I would have rather been having drinks with friends. Yeah.
Well, because Kelly, you're writing all day long for your clients in the nonfiction space. And then you are working on your book. And now I know you folded in your very witty, humor-filled, observant Substack on top of that. So really, you kind of have these different buckets that you're touching constantly. And side note, listeners, if you are not following Kelly on Substack, you can thank me later, but you need to follow her. What's your handle over there?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but what's your name? Is it
at Kelly? Yeah, at Kelly Kearsley.
Okay, perfect. So her publication is Does That Make Sense? And I'm telling you, it is the best read. It's so much fun. Okay, so anyway,
thank you.
Continue. So you really were touching, and you still are, 3 different buckets of writing.
Yeah.
Every day almost.
Yeah, and it's funny. I'm starting work on my second book while I'm a bit of a lull while we're waiting for revisions to come in on the first one. And I'm realizing I'm back to square one, where if I don't block out time for the second book, in no giant surprise, it won't get done. So prioritizing it and treating it a bit like a job is super important.
I think that is the best advice you can give people is put it in your calendar, treat it like a job, pretend you're getting paid for it, even if you're not.
Yep.
And also I kind of want to back up and really emphasize one thing Kelly shared was you learned how to receive feedback from editors way back early on in your nonfiction days. And I cannot stress how important that is. I always tell people my first job was writing 2 paragraphs a week for the local Visitors Association on their travel blog. And I just learned to get feedback from an editor. I learned to talk to an audience. I learned to see what my voice was. I didn't even know what my voice was back then. And so I really encourage anyone listening, if you're working on long fiction novels and you've never written for an audience before, start a newsletter, start a blog, see if you can just get a part-time gig for, like me, your local Visitors Association in your town. Do anything you can do to learn to work with an editor, an audience, and your own voice. Yeah.
I found myself getting to the point. So one of the first bits of feedback I ever got, it was a new intern at a small newspaper. And one of the best editors there just looked at my lead first sentence of the story and said, "This effing sucks."
Oh my gosh.
And I remember just being like devastated. I'm so embarrassed. And I think her words were maybe harsh, although newspapers will love to swear. So I actually ended up being very sweary when I was in that industry. But what it taught me was she was just delivering feedback in an efficient way. It was not that personal. It needed to be better. I improved it and we moved along. I think that's hard to say with fiction writing. It can feel very personal. But one thing that I think that fiction writers could think about sometimes, particularly new ones, is that you are writing for yourself, but you're writing for readers. And so when readers are giving you feedback, that is something to consider. You don't have to act on all feedback, but it is interesting to listen to readers and remember that the thing you're creating is for other people's enjoyment as well as your own. So you want it to shine.
Absolutely. Okay. So we're going to fast forward a little bit. Speaking of making your work shine, you made your work shine enough to catch an agent. So I glossed over it in the beginning because I wanted to rush into all the things query, but can you just kind of back up and talk about two things for us? One is what it was like to get the call from the agent and what happened next. And then what it was like to go on submission to publishers.
Yep. So right after I told Nicole maybe I was going to put this book in a drawer, I then ended up talking to the person who became my agent on a long call.
Can you say who it is since it's in marketplace?
Yep. It's Jamie Carr from the book group, whom I adore. And a couple takeaways I had from that first call was that we really clicked when we first started talking. It was comfortable. We were on the same vibe. She's really fun. We were laughing. And I felt like this was someone I could work with for a long time.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I still feel like that. She's so lovely. And I was curious to hear what she was going to say. Because like I said, I talked to other agents. At that point, I had a few full requests out, but I had not heard back. And I'd also gotten feedback that maybe other agents thought that they didn't know how to market my book. So I did have real questions about what was her vision for marketing? Where did she kind of see it landing? And it was really fun to hear her response. And I think for listeners out there, something to keep in mind is the subjectiveness of this process can be tough, but it can also be really encouraging because where one person may not see a spot for a book, another person does. Yeah. And so, Jamie and I clicked right away. I kind of circled back as you do with the other agents that had my book, but I was really hoping to sign with her and we did.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, that's such a good point. Listeners, I hope you're paying attention. Just because one person says, I can't market this book or there is no market for this book, literally someone the very next day could say, I know how to market this book and I know who I could sell it to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was fun. I think another thing to keep in mind is it is thrilling and flattering to be on that call, but you do have to put on your business hat and kind of keep your own interests in mind. You want to consider that thing. Is this someone you think you could work with? Are you aligned with their vision? Do you like what they're saying?
Yeah.
Do you like how they're saying it? You know, again, this person's going to be kind of your first editor in the industry. So you want to know what they think of your book. Are they asking for changes that you would want to do that you think will make the manuscript better? So I ended that call super thrilled, happy with the direction. So then we embarked on 2 rounds of revisions.
But those were quick as well.
They were quick and we were kind of aiming to get out on submission before the summer slowdown. I don't know if that's an industry term, but we get it. People are checked out a little bit, maybe in July and August. Yeah. And so we thought the book was close enough that we could make some changes and get it out there. Really enjoyed those revisions. I think you get to a point with your own work where you kind of can't see the forest through the trees. And I was at a point where I just needed someone else to tell me, what does this need next to level it up? Yeah. So Jamie really did that. We went out on submission in May, and that is also another crazy process. Jamie did an awesome job of just kind of guiding me through what to expect. And
which, by the way, I'm going to interrupt. Mm-hmm. I've worked with enough writers to say that's not the case across the board. I've had authors who just signed with the first agent, even though they didn't really necessarily like them. And then maybe 9 months later, the agent would say, oh yeah, I put you on submission, but they never told the writer. They didn't know who they were going on submission to. So you really struck it up with someone who kept you in the loop pretty tightly.
Yeah, and so professional and things that I just so appreciated. I mean, I've read lots of stuff about kind of what to expect from agents, but kind of understanding who they're submitting to, getting a sense of the timeline, their strategy, things like that. we were really lucky and excited to hear back from an editor just 5 days after we went out on submission.
Incredible.
Yeah, who was interested in the book. And so we ended up on a call with that person a couple days after that.
And you knew by talking to the editor of the publishing house that they also got you and got your book, because that's important, right?
Yeah, I think because I have a one-of-one experience, I don't know if this is advice, but it's more of an observation. I have felt like when I have met with both my agent and then with Jackie, the editor at Grand Central, that we were really simpatico. Like we were aligned with each other. I would say authors treasure the conversations you're having with people who enjoyed your book and are just as excited about it as you are. And that is like such a motivating thing to know that you created something that resonated with someone. I really underestimated that feeling of talking to someone about my book and hearing their take and how they would want to make it better, but also what they liked about it was just really special and exciting. So we had another great call with Grand Central, and that is who ended up buying the book.
Amazing. Congratulations. I am so thrilled for you.
Yeah.
We've chatted a lot offline too, just about like how much fun it was to get these people so excited about your book and you, particularly as an author. And I mean, you just are in the sweet spot right now. If you guys are working on this book, but like you said, you're also thinking about your next book. Did the publisher give you a rough idea of what year your book's coming out in? Because we know they don't come out in the same year.
I'm scheduled for like early 2027.
Amazing, which is very typical, right?
Yeah.
So for anyone out there listening, books and film is kind of the same. Like, yes, it gets made this year, but it's probably not going to hit the shelves for a couple of years.
Yeah. And I don't know if it was a surprise to me, but I definitely come from industries that move really fast. I've worked in journalism, I've worked in startups, in a lot of tech. And something I'm learning is that the ability to slow down is actually quite a gift. That urgency doesn't always mean importance. Like something can be very important and you're dedicating time to it. And that is good. I actually think that's something throughout the whole process, querying, writing, everything, that it's just going to take time. So we will take the time to make revisions, and we have the time, and we'll create something that I hope is even better than what we have now and that really resonates with readers. But there is no hard and fast deadline for any of this.
Yeah, it's a long game for sure.
It's a long game, and that is hard for me because I play a lot of short games. But it's been a really good practice to get into, to just settle into the work, to think deeply about it, and really kind of try hard to make it better.
Okay, so now that we know your book's coming out in 2027, can you say the genre? And I always push people to say, and you know this from working with me, is like, what sort of tone does your book strike, or what kind of story message? Because I know about it, but can you just share what kind of books you write?
Yes. So the book that's coming out is called Talented and Gifted. The genre is upmarket fiction. We did call this humorous, heartfelt fiction. It's a story of a woman in midlife who has suffered a big setback, something that's knocked her fully off track. My main character was a successful mom blogger who got canceled on the internet, and she's needing to restart her life in a startup. And so I was pleased to hear from people while we were on submission that stories about like midlife women and stories of reinvention are, I don't know if they're having a moment, but people are interested in them right now.
They're totally having a moment. And you bring in all of your intimate knowledge of the startup world, the tech world, the bro culture, all of that stuff. So it's a phenomenal read, and I won't make you give too much more away about it, but I think that that's enough for readers to know, like, oh yeah, this is definitely my type of book. I'm so happy that you are sharing all of this, what I call soup to nuts, with us about where you started, how your process evolved, all the different kinds of writing you do, now the book deal. But what I want to do is wrap this up with the people that are out there right now who are just getting through their first manuscript, and they're thinking about, where do I belong in the marketplace? What kind of writer am I? What kind of publishing path seems right for me? What is sort of your gut instinct advice that comes to top of mind for you?
When I look back over the past couple of years and how this has all evolved, that I thought I was doing one thing, which was writing a book. But what I was really doing was reinventing my life. And I think that when you approach this book writing from like this podcast is called The Whole Writer. So when you approach it from your whole self, when you come at it from a community point of view, when you come at it from a skills point of view, when you come at it from like, how do I prioritize this dream that I have amidst all the other things we have to do, what you end up with in the end, whether you have an agent or a book deal, is this amazing creative life that you've created that's totally different from where you started and so much better. And I think that has been kind of my number one takeaway, to like not sound cheesy, but like the journey of it has been as valuable as the end goal. And I'm still on it. There's still more to come. But I do think it can get hard when you're stuck on that end goal, when you're like, this is what I want, and it's taking a long time, to sometimes focus on what are the smaller milestones in between. What is this process giving you that you haven't had in the past? Because it's something that you sacrifice a lot for, but you also get a lot out of it, or I hope that you do.
Incredible. I mean, really, that is so powerful. You set out to create a thing, but what you wound up doing was creating a whole different kind of creative life for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. I love it. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I know that you're very open and available. So if someone wanted to maybe send you a message or follow you, tell listeners how they can find you.
Sure. So Substack is a great way. I'm on Substack and I have a newsletter that goes out weekly, although it's on a tiny hiatus right now while I move houses. And I'm on Instagram. I respond to direct messages on Instagram as well.
How do they find you on Instagram?
At Kelly Kearsley.
Okay.
And I have a website, kellykearsley.com, that you can message me through as well.
Great. And I will put all of that in the show notes. Kelly, I'm so thrilled for you. And I'm so happy that you're sharing this experience with the listeners. So I would encourage all of you to follow Kelly, like I said, especially on Substack. It will just make your whole week when you get that newsletter. And thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay.
It was fun.
Yeah. Okay, listeners, thank you so much. And we'll see you again on The Whole Writer. If you want to check out my coaching programs for fiction writers, visit NicoleMeyer.com. That's MEIER. And if you like this episode, I'd love you to take a minute to leave a rating and review for this podcast. This will help more writers like you to discover the show and to get going on their writing journey. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, happy writing, everyone.